Do you like the north of England? Would you like to spend a couple of days doing nothing but playing board games, eating great food, in the presence of fantastic people, some well-known faces from board game media, and potentially Matthew Jude smelling great? Then come to AireCon between the 13th to 15th of March next year. Tickets and more information are available on their website. That's aircon.co.uk and also in the links in the show notes. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for October. Now, could be spooky, could be autumny. There's a lot of themes. Halloween. Now there's a film for you. There's a lot of themes, a lot of films going about that have themes to do with spooky stuff. And sometimes you just want to talk about these films. And if you're going to be talking about these films, you really want to get yourself a little bit of an expert. Maybe somebody who, knows an awful lot about films, involves himself in the media, maybe has gone as far as writing a quiz book about such things. So it's a little bit of a breakaway from the norm. But I'm not here to talk about somebody who's young geek. It's maybe somebody who's maybe a little bit vintage geek. Because joining me on the show, I've got Marshall Julius. So hello, Marshall.
Well, hello. I suppose I am a vintage geek. It's true. I turned 50 this year, so I suppose that does make me something of a vintage character.
How you doing? Are you well? Are you just back? You sound tired. Are you been on journeys, Mr. Julius?
I have. I just got back from New York Comic Con. Which was 4 days of just absolute mad, intense, wonderful craziness. I really, really enjoyed it. So it was just wonderful, but it's like it is incredibly tiring. I was staying in a hotel like a mile and a half away from the Javits Center, which is this enormous place where they basically fill it stuffed full of nerds like myself and nerds unlike myself, cosplay nerds and stuff.
Yeah.
But, I love it. It's amazing. But I was sent over by this wonderful toy company called Far Out Toys Inc. And they have produced this fantastic toy line called Pulp Heroes. They're these kind of collapsible cardboard Marvel and Star Wars characters. And they fold flat and they go into these kind of vintage comic book sleeves. And then you pull them out and they pop out into full 3D. And they have wheels. And they're just really fun. And they look cool. They're good for toy photographers. And they're good to play with. They're good for collectors. And so I was very excited to unveil the new Star Wars range.
Oh,
and
cool.
So they sent me they sent me to New York, and they said there's going to be we'll send the toys to your hotel, and every day. I said, I'll go down and I'll hand some out. I'll tell people about it. I'll tell them about our social media. I'll schmooze with people. And they said, that sounds amazing. And we've had, 200 sent to you. And, but the ones from China, the Star Wars ones, we sent you the Marvel ones, but the Star Wars ones are coming from China. And every single one of those was sent in a separate pallet. So every single toy was wrapped in this very hard cardboard case and 6 of those to every box. So basically, when I turned up to the hotel, I had 30 boxes of stuff to go through. And they'd sent me one of those sharp knives, the X-Acto knives or whatever they call it, the box cutters in America. And I basically, having travelled for like 18 hours or something, I'm in my very small hotel room trying to move around, and I just created this mad. I could have created the craziest box fort ever. But, it was fine. I got them all out. I got them separated. Every day I would go with this massive backpack to Comic-Con, and I would hand out toys to people I really love doing that. It was like I have the sort of Santa body type. So I didn't have that. I should have cosplayed, but I should have cosplayed.
You might have been arrested though if you were going about handing out kind of like toys to folk dressed as a Santa, though. You know, that might have been a possibility.
I wasn't trying to lure them into a van or anything. I was out in plain sight. And honestly, I really loved doing it. It was really fun because people were excited to see them. They're really cool looking toys. You can get them on Amazon now, but when I was giving them out, they were like brand new, and I started giving them out like a day before they were even released. So it was pretty exciting to see people's reaction. And of course, I'm like, oh yeah, would you like this toy? It's free. And then as soon as they took it, I said, oh, can I have a picture with you? So it's like, see, there's no such thing as free, not really. But I was giving them, giving them to cosplayers.
Yeah.
And, it's fantastic. You find a Darth Vader cosplay, you give them a Darth Vader toy. I mean, it's like that picture just creates itself. So I had a lot of fun doing that. And while I was at Comic-Con, I was also, like you mentioned, I was promoting my book as well.
Yeah, because you've been involved in, I guess, the kind of the geek world for a long time. I mean, growing up, it was, was that when you kind of started really kind of getting the itch for everything kind of like Star Warsy and sci-fi and stuff like that? Was that what happened when you were kind of when you were a younger kind of Marshall?
Well, younger Marshall's actually interested in most of the same things that older Marshall's interested in. I mean, I was just like everybody else, my age, or most everybody else my age in the 70s when Star Wars came out. I was 9 years old, and it blew my mind, and it changed my life forever. I mean, it's easy these days to, you get one event film after another, and you just don't really appreciate the specialness of any of it. I think maybe people feel that way about Marvel films, but even Marvel films, you've got 2-3 a year. This was like when Star Wars came around, there was nothing like it. There'd nothing been like that before. Not really. It just changed the game, and it just set me on this crazy course. I mean, I was always into geeky things before.
Yeah.
My cousin, Ronald, who goes by Ron now, and is a producer. He produced the Twilight Zone play, in the West End recently. He's a few years older than me. I used to go to his house. He was a collector. He kind of, turned me on to collecting, really. My mum was a nerd before the term even existed. We used to, I grew up watching films with her, and she showed me every kind of thing, and she would always tell me about them. She would tell me, about the actors and to a lesser extent, but the directors, all these great behind the scenes stories. And she had such incredible enthusiasm for it that I was just primed to be a nerd through both of their influences and through just my natural, being of meanness.
Were you interested in what was behind the scenes then? I mean, it sounds to me like it wasn't just a case that you were the guy that you'd watch Star Wars and then you would join the queue again. It sounds to me like you got to the point where you were kind of a bit, well, this is fine, but actually I'd be interested to know how this kind of works a little bit more behind the scenes. And it wasn't just the films themselves, it was also maybe the things that surrounded the films, as in how they got made, who were the people behind it and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, once you realize that if you like North by Northwest, say, it's like, and you find out as a kid that was a kind of signature film from this man called a director, who's the one that is, most responsible for the artistic direction of a film. And then you think, okay, so what? So I really like that. And it turns out he made loads of other films. And it's like, well, if I like one, maybe I like the other. And then, and then you watch a bunch of other Hitchcock films and you think, oh my God, I've really stumbled onto something. It's like, so what other film directors do I like? And then you think, well, kind of what genres do I like? And I mean, you're not necessarily thinking that way consciously, but once you start to see kind of patterns and you realize what it is that you like, then you seek out more of it. And I was interested in who was responsible for the things that I loved, and to a lesser extent how they made it. I mean, behind the scenes stuff is fun, but I'm not super technical, so I wasn't particularly interested in the nitty gritty of it, but I enjoyed, as I was getting older, horror movie makeups, and I liked kind of the stories that you hear, the crazy things that go on, and the big characters that are involved, and my mum would tell me a lot of those things. So I was just interested. I loved the films and the shows. I wanted to know about the people who made them. I wanted to see what else they did, and in the 70s and the 80s. Nowadays everybody's spoiled. You've got, everything you can find on the internet. Everything has got like hours of special features. But that wasn't the case. When I was growing up, if you wanted to see behind the scenes stuff, they sometimes had these very late documentaries, always as fillers at different times. And, or you had to go up to town or comic book conventions, which are also quite thin on the ground, and read Starlog and, those sorts of magazines. And, it was a little bit harder, but I didn't mind that, because it felt like if you earned the knowledge, you earned the knowledge and the geekery that you walked away with. And so it also turned out that I had a kind of a decent capacity for remembering all of that stuff, not about real world stuff. I never did very well in school because I was never really interested in the sorts of things they taught me at school. I like to write, and I was interested in films, and those two things just kind of led me to where I am and the path I'm still on, I suppose.
It's because you've got what can only be described as a hugely respectable collection in terms of memorabilia and just stuff that your average kind of person would walk in and go, "Oh, this is amazing!" And it's like, was that something you started off from an early age as well? Because I know a lot. Because I know there's a ton of Star Wars fans out there who are still will wake up crying at 4:00 in the middle of the night, going, "I can't believe I chucked out my X-wing," kind of thing. And there are obviously other people who manage to hold on to it. It goes into an attic, it goes into a box, and then they go away to university, or or they're just they're cleaning out. A lot of the time from the stories I hear, it's like they cleaning out the house when one of their parents kind of passes away, and they're just trying to get, and they open the box and they go, "Oh, look, there's all my Star Wars stuff. There's my there's my Battle for the Planets kind of books and stuff like that." I mean, did you manage to hold on to the stuff that you had, your toys and stuff, or is that something that you kind of have retroactively kind of collected over the time as time goes on?
No, not at all. My 7s, Arc 7s, my C-3POs, my Twinkies, I bought them, and I collected them as they were coming out. To some extent, I bought some older stuff as I would seek it out at conventions, but I never put my stuff away in boxes. My stuff was never stuck in the loft. There was never a time when I disappeared from the house for a few years. And, you hear a lot of stories about when people do go to uni and their parents have a clear out and they get rid of all their stuff. I hear that a lot, especially from people who come and look at my collection, and then they say, I had that Chewbacca, or I had, that Millennium Falcon, but, my parents got rid of it. And, I that sort of parenting I regard as abusive, I think it's completely unforgivable. Oh my God, my mum, there was no way that she would have put her hands on my stuff, I was I never really wanted to throw anything away. From when I was small, I kind of saw the value in odd things, I suppose. I remember my dad died when I was small, when I was about 9 years old. I remember going with him to the off license to get a crate of Cokes, Coca-Cola that came in that classic bottle back then. And gosh, I sound really old. And at the time, there were some kids at school who were wearing these like necklaces with tiny Coke bottles on them. I thought that was cool. There was just something about the Coke design that I thought was just. I wouldn't have used the word iconic then. But there was something that I saw in it, some sort of value, some sort of kind of aesthetic that I really appreciated. And so we went to the off license, and my dad got a crate of Cokes, and I said to him, can I have a bottle, please? And he said, what, are you thirsty? I said, no, can I just have a bottle as an ornament in my bedroom?
Yeah.
And, he looked at me for a second. He said, yeah, absolutely. If that's what you want. And, I've still got that Coke bottle.
Wow.
I'm looking at it right now. I still got that Coke bottle, and I've still got everything else throughout my life that I had that same sort of feeling about. And I had that same sort of feeling about lots of things. I sometimes I see these things and it's like, oh my God, that's amazing. I must have it. It happened at Comic-Con, 2 days ago, and it's happened every day or every other day since I was small. And all I've done is over the years just amassed this big collection, this huge collection of stuff that I couldn't walk away from. If I see a badge or an action figure or a comic book or a set of trading cards and I just think that, there's just something about that really appeals to me, then, screw it, get it.
Do you collect things because they're collectible, or because there's two sides? I see there's two sides to a collector. And you get them in the board game side of things. You get people that will buy a certain board game because they know if they hang on to it, it's going to be worth some money. And it's the same with the Star Wars memorabilia. People are all going on about, well, if you have this Obi-Wan Kenobi that was produced in this batch, he's got a slightly different coloured skin tone, which means he's worth an extra gazillion pounds kind of thing. But do you ever... I mean, obviously, some of the stuff that you'll have will be valuable, but it sounds to me that you're the type of person that you kind of value your collection based on the memories that it's kind of given you. Like the Coke bottle's a really good example, but is there other things you look around and go, I remember when I got that, I've got a good idea of when I kind of got that. And are you a collector of almost memory joggers as opposed to a collector of saying, well, once I pop my clogs, this can be all sold and they can make a small fortune with it?
Absolutely. I think, honestly, if you want to collect as some sort of investment, then I think that there's better things to invest your money in. I think there are smarter, safer things to invest your money in than memorabilia. I only ever collect stuff that I just really want. It just, the few times in my life when I thought, okay, I don't really have a feeling for that, but I have access to this and I'm pretty sure that it's going to be worth something one day. The few times in my life where I cynically tried to get something just so that I could turn it round one day, it actually turned out to be not that valuable. There were these Star Wars customizable card game cards, and I collected a whole bunch of those, but then so did millions of other people, and it's just, to this day they have almost no value. And so it taught me a lesson. And you just you get what you love, and if it turns out to be valuable, then great. And if it doesn't, well, that shouldn't be why you bought it in the first place. I think that when I was small, that whole kind of built-in collectability wasn't a thing. You didn't have toy companies, screwing with 100 of a figure, so saying with a slight difference to make it a chase figure, or you didn't have trading card companies create 300 extra cards, signature cards, and shiny cards, and fold out blueprint cards, and just every possible kind of technology, just so that they could have all these chase cards that even if you bought a whole box, you wouldn't get a whole set. You'd have to, you'd get a base set or two base sets and maybe 2 or 3 of the specials, but then you'd have to go online and hunt them down. And hunting down things is kind of fun to some extent, but at some point you realize that you're never actually going to get everything. You just can't, because even if you try and get every single card in a set of something, there's going to be some convention exclusive on the other side of the world that they only had 50 of, and that, you're never going to get hold of that. And so, although I kind of have the spirit of a completist, I realized a while ago that actually it's an illusion. So I just get things that I want. I don't worry about collecting whole sets of things anymore. I mean, yes, I've got whole runs of comic books. I've got complete sets of trading cards to the best of my, ability. But it's expensive, and it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to collect all these cards and put them away and never look at them again. And yeah, I mean, I do have a lot of cards like that because the hunt is kind of very satisfying. But now it's just, it's quite cynical, the business. And, coming back from Comic-Con, where, you have to enter a lottery to be given the opportunity to shop in the Funko store, and then when you do, you spend $1,000 on, 50, 100 figures, and then you go immediately to eBay and you sell them for 3-4 times what you paid for them. And it was like, Funko is encouraging that sort of madness. There were people who had won the lottery for the opportunity to queue for 2 hours to buy inflated price Funko things because it's a slightly different color scheme, or, they've created this great toy that everybody would like, but, instead of making enough of it so that everyone can have one, they've only made 300 of them and numbered them. And, they just create this kind of fake scarcity. And there were people who came out of the Funko store and they were just, they were selling them like, 50 meters away around the corner for 3 times what they just bought for them. And people were buying them.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, it's kind of sad because I remember it was always stuff was all available. I remember kind of like the World Cup sticker albums.
Yeah.
And you could still... You could still contact Panini and ask them to give you the stickers that you didn't have. You would send them money. You would send them and here, this is where we both show that we're old, a postal order. You'd go down to the post office and you'd give them money. They would give you a postal order. You'd send it off to Panini, and it was something like 4 pence or 5 pence a sticker, and it's something like 10 pence for a shiny one. And you'd be able to kind of complete your set. Because I remember the Star Wars one, Return of the Jedi. I think Return of the Jedi was when it really kind of went beyond the kind of the normal merchandising, and when it started to get maybe a little bit silly. I remember Return of the Jedi yogurts. I remember Return of the Jedi. I just all different kind of strange kind of bits of memorability. I do remember the Return of the Jedi sticker album, and you could actually kind of go and get the stickers that you didn't have, and funnily enough, I think they had pictures in the sticker album which weren't part of the actual film. I think they'd taken a couple of frames that didn't kind of exist, which was kind of interesting.
I love those Panini things. And yes, look, here it was just one basic set of stickers.
Yeah.
And they and if you were 5 or 6 short that you couldn't get, and I think they kind of discouraged you to order like dozens and dozens. Up to like £1 or something. I seem to remember when I was very young actually sellotaping a few coins to a postcard and putting it in an envelope and sending that. And getting a few stickers from Panini. But nowadays, you'd have to buy hundreds of packets of something in order to complete a collection. And look, it's like if people want to do that, I don't want to say that collecting now is no good, but it's definitely it's a more avaricious business than it used to be. And it used to be that toys were produced for kids, and that us man children and woman children, that we just saw some appeal in it and we wanted to collect them, and just the world caught up with us basically. So things became collectible by accident, not by design. And I think when you try and make something by design, it does take a little bit of the specialness away from you. Like, I like good bad movies, but the best bad movies were made by filmmakers who wanted to make a good movie, but they were just terrible. And they ended up making a terrible film, like Ed Wood, his films. He wasn't trying to make a bad film. So I don't think you can consciously make a great collectible. Not really. I think, you get the filmmakers now who try and make these parody bad films, and they just don't work for me in the same way that an accidentally bad film does. And so for me, collectibles that were created just for fans and kids of the films when they came out have more value and meaning to me than, say, the latest trading card collection that you are absolutely almost physically impossible. You have no chance of collecting properly.
Is there a holy grail? I mean, what I'm trying to say is there an Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark idol that you would risk jumping across a pit, avoiding a rolling boulder in order to run in, kind of avoid all the pressure pads, and stand and exchange like a bag of sand, and there was a collectible on the pedestal? What would that collectible be that you'd be willing to take that risk?
That's a really good question. I think that what I want more than anything is just more room for my existing collectibles. What I would like to be on the other end of that gorge is another room that I could just, I could then possess, and I could fill up the walls. And I don't have any one particular thing that I would be desperate to have. I mean, there are certain things that would be nice, autographs of people who have passed, like a Groucho Marx signed picture, or a Boris Karloff, or Doug McClure, but I suppose now that I'm thinking while I'm answering, and there is this one thing that I probably would endanger my life to acquire, and it was this, I can't remember the company that made it offhand, because it's been a few years since I tried to stop thinking about it because it was driving me crazy. It's this fantastic Japanese Robbie the Robot. And it was quite a decent size and beautiful, just really kind of very accurate. And if you popped it open from the head, inside there was a scale model of the guy who actually operated it from the inside during Forbidden Planet. And I thought that's got to be I thought that's got to be the they found out who it was. They actually made facially it's like spot on. And so you got like a really great Robbie the Robot with this fantastic secret inside. And Robbie for me has always been the ultimate movie robot. And he's amusing, he's chunky, retro, brilliant, and he's got mad skills. And I think that toy, I would really, really like that toy. I think most of the other kind of things that I've chased in my life have actually gotten, or kind of gone, I can live without that. But I would probably jump across the gorge, or I would grab one of my kids and hurl them across the gorge and say, go on, grab it, because I could probably hurl them more further than I could jump myself. And I'd have a rope attached, so, they'd have a better than average chance of surviving.
I'm glad you added that bit in, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, well, I'm not a monster.
When did the writing start? I mean, when was it you kind of decided, actually, I'm going to start to write stuff. I don't just want to, enjoy this. I want to almost tell other people that I kind of enjoy this. So, when did that kind of kick off for yourself?
Well, writing was at school the only thing that I enjoyed. I like kind of creative writing. I like making things up. When I hit about 18, I finished, I did my A-levels, and I had to decide about, did I want to go to university? Did I want to study journalism? Or it seemed like writing was the only thing that I was actually good at in terms of trying to make a living doing something. I was lucky enough at 18 to get a job for What's on in London magazine, which was a, sort of flea pit of a magazine. It was a tourist thing, but it gave me tremendous access to a world that I could have only dreamed about before. I was at 18. I was going off and interviewing, movie stars and directors. I was going to screenings and swanky parties, and I was living that media lifestyle. And I was really loving it. I just really, really enjoyed it, and I came to realize pretty quickly that because you ask people today, like what you ask kids today, what they think of as an old film, and they won't even say Back to the Future. They're not going to go 30 years back. They'll go 10 years back. You ask most kids today if they've ever seen a black and white film, they look at you like you're insane. There's so much wonderful, there's so much wonderful stuff going back 100 years now that could easily be forgotten if not for nerds. Basically, and I think
you're talking about your Charlie Chaplin. I think I just on the TV the other day there was they just put a clip of kind of Charlie Chaplin, and he was doing the bit when he was going through the machine. And my son, he's only 6, and he was looking at it and going, "Who's that?" And I was like, "That's Charlie Chaplin." He was like, "Oh, that's." And he kind of watched it, and he could see it was funny, and it was obviously the extremely kind of physical comedy that's kind of going on. And he, even with the age that he is, he realizes it's kind of real, that it's not kind of, this isn't being done on wires and strings and stuff like that, that it's all down to timing and skill and stuff. And I thought, you kind of don't really have that kind of nowadays. You have very frenetic kind of John Wick, very, very well choreographed stuff, but that's usually a lot of set pieces. And I'm thinking you don't really get your Buster Keatons of this, your Harold Lloyds, or maybe you do, maybe I'm just looking at it a different way, but the kind of the magic of just having one single person not doing anything special, but making it very, very special, if you know what I mean.
I do. Well, I think that those actors that you mentioned, and people like Harold Lloyd and stuff, they were the special effects of the 20s and 30s and 40s. They were the thing that people kind of went to see. And I do think that there are lots of great films today. I don't necessarily think of the good old days as it's like the only time when there were great movies and movie stars, but. There's some stuff that's been lost over the years. I also think that the sort of stuff that Keaton used to do, frankly, no actor could do that today because he wouldn't get insured. There's no way that, frankly, for a $100 million plus movie, $150 million plus movie, that when they said, all right, Keanu, we want you to stand here and we're going to drop a house on you, that the insurance is not going to go, no, you're not.
No chance. Yeah.
So I just think that they were quite cavalier back in the day. They really, Buster Keaton especially, took his life in his hands, jumping from, without safety nets, without ropes. Just insane stuff. I think they would do stunts that they just kind of sort of worked out on paper, but never actually tried before, and they would just film it and kind of, he was very good at it. He was a real live Zorro, but it's just a different world. People were more cavalier and more daring, maybe, but it is a different world now. I think there's anything wrong with computer effects if they're not, if they're just part of the mix. I think a good mix of practical effects and CG effects, is fine. But I think it ultimately it begins and ends with the performer, and that performer, the people you watch, and they have to have some sort of, magic. You have to care about them. They have to be in some way compelling, whether it's a Keaton doing physical comedy or if it's somebody like Sam Neill, who you just enjoy to watch because there's just something about them. There's some charisma about them that you can't take your eyes off.
Yeah. You mentioned, obviously what's on London, and then did you continue? Because there's a thing about the media things that say, well, if you're going to go and see all these kind of if you're hanging around with cinema people and everything like that, then the money must be with you as well. And as I know, being involved in the media, the money just isn't kind of there. So did you stay at kind of What's on London for a period of time, or was there periods where you had to stop writing and just go into kind of like a job?
A real job?
Yeah.
No, I don't
mean that. I mean, I kind of...
No, I know exactly what you mean. Believe me, What's On in London was not like a real job. When I first started in 89, I was 20, and my first salary was £6,000 a year, and I was living at home, and honestly, it was like just drinking money as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
And it didn't really bother me. I was just having a good time and going to all these press parties and going to screenings and meeting famous people, and I was just really, really enjoying myself. And I was learning my craft. I was learning to write. Michael Darvell, the assistant editor of the magazine, there, he was the film editor. I eventually took over as the film editor when he became the editor, but he was very good teaching me stuff like grammar and spelling, things that I actually, because I really didn't learn very much at school. I could always write, but he taught me a little bit of craft, and I'm really grateful to him for that. But so, I basically learned my skills by just doing them. And I think the thing that's always charged my work is just, kind of enthusiasm and the chattiness of the way that I write. People seem to like it. So I was able to make a meager living as a journalist for a very long time. I quit What's On twice. And then kept going back. I quit. I quit the second time. I wrote my first book about action movies, and then I went back again because I was broke and I needed the job. And then after that, I started freelancing for some newspapers, the Sunday Express, and I was never, honestly, I've never really been that great, honestly, at making money. I'm trying to rectify that, but I don't know. I've never been very good at making money. I've always been very good at getting people to give me stuff for nothing, though. And so that's kind of like my superpower. It's like I see these toys and I really want them. And I've unlocked the secret of asking for them nicely and having the right people send them to me, so it's like I've always been good at blagging. Blagging has been my main thing, free and stuff creates the best phrase in the whole universe, really. So you take what you can, but it would be I think if you work in the media, unless you're exceptionally lucky, you're never really going to make a fortune. I don't know any writers, any journalists, authors, who make a super comfortable living.
No,
but they seem to love what they do, and they live it. And as long as we can get along to a press screening of something, and there's a glass of wine there, then I think most of us are quite happy.
Yeah. I see that. It's almost like a case that have you seen kind of coverage change dramatically because of the rise of the internet and things like Metacritics of this world and things like that, and even kind of Rotten Tomatoes and aggregators. And I've never ever understood how you can give a score to a film or a TV show and then compare and contrast media based on a score. That just really kind of, and I see them using it in advertising now. HBO's Chernobyl, and they were saying, it's one of the highest rated kind of TV shows of all time. It's like, compared to what? Other nuclear disaster TV shows? I mean, is this what... Oh no, you're comparing it to Breaking Bad. Why are you comparing it to Breaking Bad? I don't get it. It's like, it's kind of like, it's like somebody comparing, like, I don't know, let's look at like the Mona Lisa, and then let's look at kind of like the Statue of David, and then let's put them up against each other to see which one is the better. It bakes my noodle just seeing where we are in terms of, and in board games we're lucky because we don't seem to have gone down the numerical value. Video games are stuffed, and it seems like movies seem to be the case that you have this Rotten Tomatoes thing, which is fine. I understand that, but also I don't get it because you end up reducing somebody like you to say, give me a soundbite on the Joker film, and it's like, well, no, bugger off and read my review because I spent 2 hours writing that bad boy, and you just want like a quick soundbite to say whether you thought it was good or bad.
Well, I think that the internet has killed traditional journalism because, most people are online now, so magazines and newspapers are few and far between. So pretty much every magazine and newspaper that I've written for has at one point said to me, Marshall, we just have to cut our freelance budget and we're going to take everything in-house. We're not going to take you in-house. And then, you start again. You start again and again. It's like for years and years, you're just proving yourself to a new set of people and a new set of people. And it is hard bloody work. It is hard, disheartening, poorly paid work where people are saying, oh, well, could you just do this for a little while and, prove yourself? And, it's like, for God's sake, how am I going to be proving myself until I die? It's like all that kind of, oh, this is really good for you for exposure, and everybody wants to get something for nothing. And the fact is that there are kids who come out of, university, and rightly so, they need to build up a stock of work for people to see. And so there's always somebody, whether they can write or not, whether they have experience or not, who's willing to do the work for free. Most online sites are more interested in you just hitting the right SEO keywords than actually writing work of quality. They basically just want you to write something that people, when they do search engine sites, they'll hit the right word, it'll drive them to the site, and whether or not they actually read the whole thing you've written, you're going to then just try and sell them stuff. So, it's difficult, but rather than, bitch and moan about that and feel like my traditional job had been taken away from me, I tried to move with the times. I got into social media. I kind of embraced the digital, and it took a while, but I find if you stay interested and you adapt. I like writing long reviews where I can put things in historical perspective, where I can talk about every aspect of the film, where I could write 1,000 words, I could write 2,000 words about, films, and I enjoy the care and the craft that goes into that. I like expressing myself, fully. Equally, I think that there is some skill in being able to express yourself very shortly and succinctly. And I sometimes will spend on the train home from a screening, I'll spend 45 minutes or an hour crafting what I think of as the perfect tweet, which pretty much just sums up everything. Like I just saw Joker, and I didn't like it at all. And I spent the whole journey back thinking about, what I wanted to say about it and kind of messing around with it. And it was like, I quite enjoyed that process. And by the end of the journey, I had a 280 character tweet that absolutely summed up what it was about and what I felt about it. And, I think that's an interesting challenge, and I do enjoy doing that. And I think that although I was, trolled by some people for, if you don't like something, or if you do like something, there's always going to be somebody who has a go at you. But I've kind of, if I've been frustrated in my life with work, I've kind of turned more and more to Twitter. I've used my journalist training, like when I was younger, it's like there was a real cachet in being able to craft a good snappy headline. And in a way, tweets are kind of like extended headlines. You know, you come up, they're a bit punny, they're kind of snappy, and so I kind of felt like that suits me. You know, if I think of something funny, or I see a funny picture, or Twitter for me works because it's a good combination of image and words. Instagram is fine, but I'm not interested in a medium where you basically it's 100% the picture. You know, that works for products, and that's amazing. But for people, you know, I've got something to say, and so I turned increasingly to Twitter, and I used it as a place to talk about all the things I loved, to show pictures of my collection, to connect with other nerds like myself, and to share clips of classic movie musicals and science fiction movies and horror movies. And then increasingly, I started making my own content, my own kind of silly videos and pictures, and people seem to like it. And I found a lot of people, like I would talk a lot about Ray Harryhausen movies and stuff. And people would say, "Oh, I've never seen that," or "Oh, that's amazing," or what, or they want to know more about it. And I feel like that's a pretty noble pursuit for a geek to actually keep these things alive and to inform people about it. And that I don't mean to sound highfalutin. Mostly, I'm just sharing the things I love with other people like yourself who also love them, and we're just nerding out together because that's what we like to do. I also like Twitter because I've made, on Twitter and social media, that's how, we first met and started talking to each other. And actually, I've made lots of people who I consider good friends through Twitter, and people who've, Twitter's given me tremendous access to people who I would never have been able to meet or talk to. I mean, outside of 10-minute interviews and things. And so the thing is, so now I've got just over 100,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
They kind of, but it's like you've got to put in the time for that. It's it's not like I'm not paying a company to boost my numbers. There's no fake followers there. It's it's because I created this safe place where there's no politics, there's no trolling, there's no Brexit, there's no Trump. It's just a place where people can kind of escape all of that stuff on Twitter and come and just have some good, clean, mostly clean, nerdy fun. And because of that, I've actually started to get followed by loads of celebrities. And by celebrities, I don't mean the Kardashians of the world. I'm talking about filmmakers, actors, directors, lots of writers, comic book artists.
Who's the most surprising person that you've had? Who's the person that's made you went go, oh dear.
Well, I didn't know why Gordon Ramsay followed me. That was kind of mysterious. Courtney Love followed me, and I thought that had to be a mistake. And then she unfollowed me a year later after having I don't know what that was about. But I think I stopped being surprised because I realized that although we like to think of, filmmakers and all the people who we admire as somehow being sort of not human exactly, just, or better or kind of legendary or somehow, but, it turns out that actually they're people, and that there's a very good percentage of actors and writers and filmmakers who are actually colossal nerds. And when it comes to nerds, we all connect on the same level. I've met and had fantastic conversations with people like Tim Burton, and, we were talking about Bond films and Harryhausen movies, and he wasn't talking to me as I'm Tim Burton, the kind of idiosyncratic auteur who's had all this success and blah blah blah. He was talking to me as just somebody who really grew up watching Bond films and loves them, and The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, and geeking out over that. And it was I think if you realize that actually that there's a lot of geeks in the world. And then, so now when people sometimes when somebody famous and cool follows me, I think, okay, another nerd's joined the game.
Nerd to the collection.
Yeah, and
exactly.
I love it. And I remember I was watching a few years ago, Girls, and Hannah, the character Hannah, she went to a shrink played by Bob Balaban. And I always liked Bob Balaban ever since Close Encounters. His character was talking about like a guy who goes around with a time traveling dog. She was talking about a book that she'd written, and he said, "Oh yes, I've written a book about like a time traveling dog," or it was some crazy thing. And I tweeted, and this was long before I had loads and loads of followers, but I tweeted like. And I tagged him in it, and I said, "Gosh, I wish you would write that book. I think that would just be so amazing." I thought that was just so funny. And he replied to me, he said, "Well, I did write that book. I actually wrote a whole series of books like that. It was just a big in joke in the show, and here's a link to them." And that was the first time that an actor or a celebrity had kind of directly replied to me, and I really liked it. And I thought, hello, okay, I have some more of that, please. And what I especially liked about it was that today, look, PRs and marketing people, they do a difficult job, and it's a crowded marketplace, but they do tend to do their main job seems to be running interference between journalists and talent. And whereas it used to be a symbiotic relationship, now I think they just hold you at arm's length. Now they're there to, instead of facilitating a nice hour-long interview, they're saying, okay, well, you can have 2 minutes on camera with the person, and we're going to stand behind them the whole time, and we're going to do this motion, which means wrap it up, and we're going to shake our head if we're not happy with the question, and basically they just get in the way. And what I liked, something else I like about Twitter is like you can reach out to the people who you admire, and you can just contact them directly. And most of them probably aren't necessarily going to even notice you or reply to you. But I actually have more success in meeting and chatting with people online than I have through any official means. And so, fast forward to when I get this book contract. Which I originally I've been pitching around this quiz book idea for years, and they're like, "Oh, Marshall, quiz books aren't going to work in print. Print is dead. Nobody's interested. You've got to be like Harry Potter or blah blah blah." And it's like, well, I don't know. I think that actually, a quiz book written properly, written with love and full of juicy information and fun facts, and written right. Could be, just what the doctor ordered, really. But it was like it took a long time for somebody to come around to that. In the end, it took me having 100,000 followers on Twitter to convince a publisher that actually I had the juice and the following to create something like that. And so I was happy. I was off. And I was very pleased that September Publishing took a punt on me, and I really, really appreciate that. So after I got the contract, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun if I actually asked a few of the people following me for questions? And it wasn't like something that I sold the book on, but because it was it was a bit speculative, saying I would like to ask of the 200 most famous followers that I have, if I ask everybody, and then hopefully some of them will get back to me and give me some answers, and that'll be a nice thing to add to the book. Well, I just thought of it afterwards, and I reached out to some people, and they, I DM'd, say, 10, 20, 30 people, and a decent number got back to me, 15, 20, and of those 15 or 20, 10 ended up actually giving me a question. And so, I was off. I kind of reached out to lots of people, and I ended up getting 50 really cool questions and answers from all sorts of amazing people. And it wasn't, not everybody followed me. Like I got a question from Mark Hamill for Star Wars, and he doesn't follow me. But what I did was he's very good on Twitter. And so what I did was I put out a request to kind of help me, Mark Hamill, you're my only hope. I'm running a quiz about Star Wars. And he gave me a fantastic question. And I spent, in terms of what the book covers, it covers like 20 different great 20th century fandoms. So I do James Bond, but only the Roger Moore years. I do Doctor Who, but only Tom Baker. I do the original Star Wars trilogy. I do the original Star Trek series. I do the Atari, 2600, so the first proper Atari console, the first real major console. I do Marvel Silver Age, so all 1960s Marvel, all the kind of early Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby years, and I cover a lot as far back as the Universal monsters of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and science fiction movies of the 50s, Stephen King, cinema and books of the 70s, action movies of the 80s. I go up to like Simpsons, the first 10 years of the Simpsons, and I also do like Batman the animated series. So it covers a lot of ground, and so I was able to reach out to lots of people, and either they gave me questions for the things that they'd been involved in, or they gave me questions about things that they loved. So Tony Todd, was the Candyman. I didn't actually do anything. The Candyman wasn't covered in the book, but he gave me a really great question about the Universal monsters. Mark Millar, who obviously wrote Kingsman, I wasn't actually covering anything of his in the book, but he gave me a fantastic question about James Bond, about a Roger Moore question about James Bond. And at the same time, I have a John Carpenter chapter, and I was very excited that John Carpenter gave me a question for that chapter, as well as his wife, Sandy King, who's his producer on some of his latest films, and Sam Neill gave me a question for In the Mouth of Madness. So, Tom Savini gave me a question for Dawn of the Dead, which was incredibly thrilling. I got questions from really some wonderful and surprising people. Even like Carrie Henn, who played Newt in Aliens. She gave me a question, but she gave me a question about Cinderella for my Disney chapter. Dan Lloyd, who played Danny in The Shining, he gave me a Shining question. And these are some of these questions, they've not been asked before. They're asking information that I suppose it's you're not really going to necessarily get that one right if you're asked it.
They're not easy questions, because I've kind of looked through it, and it's a case of, because normally on these things it's kind of like, oh, here's your Bond trivia kind of thing, and you read through the questions just like, yeah, I know that one, yeah, I know that one, yeah, I've seen that one. And the thing that I noticed about your book is you've not steered away from asking the more kind of difficult quiz questions that people might actually have to really scratch their head over and think over. So in that case, it's not the issue that I normally see with not a lot of these kind of fun quiz books kind of thing, is that you go through it in kind of like an hour, and you kind of go, oh, yeah, I know this, I know this, I know this. Mm-hmm. Whereas yours seems to be the thing, you would take it to a pub quiz, or everybody would sit down after dinner, or somebody who actually was a really big fan of James Bond would go, I'll go to the James Bond section because I'm bound to know all these questions, what's going on here kind of thing. And it's that kind of thing which I found intriguing, because there's an awful lot of work that's gone into kind of Vintage Geek kind of itself.
I did try my best to come up with lots of interesting questions, and I was not in the least bit concerned with look, there are questions that you're going to be able to answer questions from most chapters, and if you're a big James Bond fan, you're going to be able to answer a fair few of the questions, but you're not going to be able to answer all of the questions. If you're a big Tom Baker fan, you're going to be able to answer a decent number of the Doctor Who questions, but you are not going to be able to answer them all. I don't I wanted it to be something that, was not frustrating, but I wanted it to be a proper challenge. I didn't want it to be like a puff piece. I wanted it to be something that really rewarded lifetimes of fandom for, and if you really love The Simpsons, then you're going to do fine. If you really love, Star Wars, and who doesn't, then, you're going to do fine. But you are also going to learn some stuff. And it was important to me to not only just... like sometimes in my answers, the actual answer to the question is just the kicking off point. And after that, I like to kind of go into some more detail. So the first half of the book is obviously the questions, but the second half, it's not just the answers. We repeat the questions again. So basically, if you want to, if say you don't know much about the Universal monsters, you can actually just read the second half with the Q's and followed with the A's followed by the Q's. The Q's followed by the A's rather, and you can learn some amazing stuff. Like there was some, in my 50 science fiction chapter, there's a Day the Earth Stood Still question, And that is just a kind of a kicking off point for me, actually detailing the history of the phrase Klaatu Barada Nikto, the discussions about what it means, all the different times that phrase has turned up in other science fiction films and horror films. And because I've always been fascinated by all that sort of craziness. And so I wanted to put it all in one book. That's why I didn't want it to just be about Star Wars. I didn't want it to just be about Doctor Who. I wanted to just pack, because I'm a great fan of many things, as I think a lot of people are. And I just wanted to, pour all of that kind of love and knowledge. And obviously I did a lot of research, and, you have to really check a lot of your sources. And having had these books going back years and years, I was able to dig up stuff that I think hadn't kind of filtered online still. I'm very proud of how it turned out. I mean, I don't know, maybe that just sounds a bit arrogant, but I wanted to create something personal and fun and challenging. And that's why every chapter I begin with an introduction. Every chapter has a little bit about what this meant to me when I was a kid or when I was growing up. And, I wanted people who was sort of my sort of age, my generation, for it to tap into their memories, for them to go, oh, gosh, yeah, I remember like coming home with issue 2 of 2000 AD and putting the Bionic stickers on or the Biotronic stickers on my arm. Or if you're younger and you're reading it, I just wanted to kind of set the scene, like, this is how it felt if you were young, when Salem's Lot was on the TV, and at the end of the first part, Danny Glicks, floated up to the window and knocked on the window, and that freaked everyone the hell out, in a big way, and because it was on real television. It freaked out everyone at the same time. Everybody went to school and were talking about it. It was, that shared experience. We mainly didn't watch it together, but we certainly talked about it at school the next day. And I just wanted to kind of capture that just the feeling of how it felt to experience all those wonderful things when they first happened. And so, I suppose it's kind of very personal. Somebody said it's like the first semi-autobiographical quiz book ever written, and
it's kind of like you've written it for you going to the family get together at Christmas, kind of thing, where people who hearing it would kind of go, oh yeah, it's kind of like, it's not just a kind of a very cold, here's your questions and here's your answers kind of thing. There is an awful lot of you in that book, even though it is a kind of a quiz book. Has it meant that, are you thinking about the follow-up?
Oh yes, I'm absolutely going to do Vintage Geek Strikes Back. This one has to be successful. There have to be enough people who actually buy it and want it and love it and request another one. But I've already made a list of the next 20 chapters that I would want to do. And I'd be very happy to do another one. It does take some serious obsession. I spent a long time thinking about it. When I got the contract, I probably faffed about for the first few months, and I contacted a lot of, people who ended up being my amazing contributors, and they've just been so incredibly generous and nice. And a lot of them are helping me kind of promote it, which is just, absolutely wonderful. Excellent. And, I made some friends along the way, and I just feel really, it just sounds incredibly cheesy but I just feel kind of really blessed by this, because, all my life I kind of just wanted to create something a bit special, and I feel like I've finally cracked that. I've finally done that. I've finally created something that actually belongs in my collection. I'm very happy to have done that. The cover art itself is just beautiful. It's just cool. Candy colors, cool. and with question mark art by the great Steve Casino, who actually designed the toys that I was hawking around Comic-Con. So there's all very circular. It's there, and it all comes from Twitter. Really, Twitter's been tremendously good to me, I got to say. And I really, the book it's I'm assuming by the time anybody listens to this, the book will be out.
Yeah, what's the launch date? Is it going to be?
It's out October the 10th.
October the 10th.
Yeah, and I think in America it will be coming out a few weeks later. There's some issues with Amazon, kind of keep changing their dates, but I think it'll just be out towards the end of October in the States, and you can pre-order it now. And I think it's physically in bookshops. Actually, somebody sent me a picture from Forbidden Planet where they've already stuck it up on their shelves. So I think if you get down to Forbidden Planet in town in London, then you can get it right now. Right this minute.
How much is it going to be, Marshall?
Oh, I don't know, like 50 pence or something. I should actually have a look. I don't even know. How much is it? It says $12.99 in the UK and $16.95 in America. There you go. I actually didn't know how much my book was. I am detail-oriented, but like I said, those aren't real-life details. So that's why I could tell you everything about, Riku Browning, the guy who did all the swimming in the Creature from the Black Lagoon suit, but I can't tell you how much my book costs.
There you go. That's a brilliant place to leave it there. If people have been listening along and they want to see where you exist on the internet webs, where can we find you on the internet webs, Mr. Julius?
I think that the best place to come is to just at Marshall Julius. That's where I am every day. All of my craziness, everything I write, everything I make, everything I do, pretty much every thought I have goes through my Twitter feed. People say, do you have a website? It's like, yeah, it's my Twitter feed. That is basically where I exist online. So just go to, at Marshall Julius on Twitter and I'll be there. And
awesome.
I always respond to anybody tweets at me, asks me a question, anybody DMs me. I pay attention to everything. I never leave anybody hanging. Somebody who tries to high five you digitally, you can't just leave them hanging, can you? So it's like,
exactly.
Because I tell you what, I know what it's like to reach out to somebody speculatively on Twitter. I know how it feels to not be responded to, and I know how wonderful it feels to be responded to.
Yeah.
And so I would never leave anybody hanging. So, if you like the book, if you don't like the book, but especially if you like the book, come and talk to me, ask me questions, play along. I'm always there. I'm always on Twitter.
Awesome. And if you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, you can find us on Twitter as well at We're Not Wizards, and Instagram at We're Not Wizards, and our website we'renotwizards.com, and Facebook at We're Not Wizards. And you can find us on all the podcast catchers that either use the word pod or the word cast, or use neither, like Player FM. If you like what you've listened to tonight, then check out Marshall's book, which will be available at the time you're listening to this, and we'll put links in the show notes. You can also tell somebody else about us as well, because that's how we spread like a virus, basically. Or you can go to the Apple Podcasts and you can drop us a rating, a review, and a subscription. If you are going to be giving us a rating or review, don't give us 10 stars, because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 star, because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average.
Oh no, give him a 9. Give him a 9, for God's sake. It's 8 or a 9. It's like 5.
No.
Who asks for a 5? Are you serious? I think 8s and 9s, at least. Everybody give this an 8 and a 9 and a few 10s, because you deserve a few 10s, mate. I've seen your stuff, I've listened to your stuff, and you deserve a few 10s. Don't aim for 5s. Nobody aims for 5s.
But the person who's not been average tonight, and iTunes, Apple Podcast is at maximum at 5. Just saying. But the person who's not been average tonight is rather wonderful, rather fantastic, Mr. Marshall Julius. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on.
You are so welcome. You are welcome. I really, really love talking about myself, and so thank you for giving me the opportunity to do one of my favourite things. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Marshall?
We're not wizards. Or are
Excellent.
we wizards? No, we're not wizards. We're not wizards.
I can stop it. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Marshall. Say goodbye, Marshall.
Goodbye, Marshall.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful. And if you're in the mood for a bit of quizzing and questions and background and laughter, check out Vintage Geek. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.